Tell us if this one sounds familiar. Two anime characters are ready to face off and throw every ridiculous attack they have at each other to prove who's the best. But before the fight starts, both of their origins are explained. Taking about 4 episodes to get through it all, and by then you forgot they were about to throw hands in the first place. Usually these backgrounds are incredibly tragic and bring a tear to our eye, while fully explaining why they became the terrible or amazing person they are. Starting off, we have one of the most infamous instances of a tragic anime backstory, the Elric brothers of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. When these two characters are first introduced to the audience, their appearance and abilities are shrouded in mystery. After their mother's death, Ed and Al attempted to use alchemy to bring her back. Unfortunately, it goes completely wrong, costing Ed his leg and Al his entire body. Then, in order to bond Al's soul to the armor, Ed gave up his right arm, leaving him unable to walk before getting automail, and Al stuck in a body that can't feel. Next up, we have Goku, a character who has not one, but 2 different tragic past events. The first one we knew about was the fate of his adoptive grandpa Gohan. However, before his adopted life on Earth, Goku had another tragic occurrence in the past: the death of the Saiyan race. Specifically, Bardock, his father, knew that Frieza was up to something, so he sent his son away, leading to a tragic goodbye from both Bardock and Gine as Goku was sent to Earth and his people were obliterated. For those who never watched Naruto, Sasuke was the only survivor of the assassination of the Uchiha clan. As if having his entire clan killed wasn't bad enough, the person behind it was none other than Sasuke's brother, Itachi. After witnessing his parents' death at Itachi's hands, Sasuke swore revenge, the entire experience leading him to become cold and distant to all those around him. Something that eventually led to his turn to the dark side. Sasuke had one messed up childhood. Scratch that, his whole life is super duper messed up. Like Naruto, most of the characters in Fairy Tail have some tragic backstory motivating them to be the way they are, or to randomly turn on their friends or make them a villain to begin with. Natsu, as well as the other Dragon Slayer characters, all have the tragic backstory of their adoptive dragon parents disappearing one day, leaving them on their own early in life. Grey Fullbuster was also orphaned at a young age, standing as the only survivor of a massive monster from the Book of Zeref. Urza is also an orphan, one who, along with her childhood friends, was forced to build and operate a magical tower that ruined all of their lives. You'd think that a kid who was born as a prince of a massive empire wouldn't have a tragic upbringing, but that is not the case for Lelouch of Code Geass. In fact, it's quite the opposite, seeing as Lelouch's mother was killed and his sister was crippled, occurrences that led Lelouch to challenge his father's authority, claiming he had left his mother defenseless. This led to Lelouch losing his claim to the throne, and his banishing to Japan, one of his father's empire's territories. From there, he was used as a political hostage and forced into hiding to protect himself and his sister. Like Goku, Vegeta's backstory from Dragon Ball is rather tragic, more so when you look at the person Vegeta eventually became. This is to say that the way Vegeta was raised can be considered one of the most tragic backstories in all of anime. Think about it. Saiyans were a warrior race with an aggressive, toxic society that respected strength and strength alone, which is why their king was the strongest of them all. As such, Vegeta was taught to beat down his enemies and display his power at all times, leading him to become a villainous person. Even after the Saiyans were destroyed, Vegeta's life wasn't easy, since he continued to do the dirty work for the person who destroyed his people. The most tragic part of Naruto's backstory is that he didn't ask for anything he got in life. We're talking about the fact that Naruto had the Nine Tails demon sealed inside of him, losing his mother and father during the original fight against that demon. Because of the fact that the demon was sealed inside of him, every other person in the Hidden Leaf Village treated Naruto with disdain, alienating him and talking about him behind his back. So Naruto grew up lonely, that loneliness leading him to act out and pull stunts like painting all over the Hokage statues, or barely attempting to make it through ninja school. Naruto would eventually make friends and find a family among them, but the fact that he grew up with everyone hating him for something he couldn't even control, for literally carrying within him the reason he was an orphan, makes for one of anime's most tragic backstories. Anyone who ever got into Bleach knows the basic story. Ichigo Kurosaki, a boy who was able to see spirits, found himself taking over the job of Rukia Kuchiki, a soul reaper who helped spirits pass on and slayed corrupted souls known as hollows. When Ichigo took over as a substitute soul reaper, he eventually came face to face with the hollow that killed his mother, the Grand Fisher. This is how we learn of Ichigo's tragic past. While walking with his mother at a young age, Ichigo noticed a young girl about to jump into a river and went to stop her, only to find out it was the Grand Fisherman using a lure. When Ichigo and his mother came face to face with the hollow, the fisherman killed his mother in front of him, leaving Ichigo and his sisters without her growing up, and making for one of the saddest backstories in anime. Hohenheim was born a slave in Xerxes, a city that was eventually destroyed, and the reason for its fall is what makes Hohenheim's background so tragic. With the help of the homunculus that would eventually become father, Hohenheim gained respect and freedom with the study of alchemy, his studies culminating in a transmutation that was supposed to make the king of Xerxes immortal. Instead, Hohenheim was given eternal life by feeding off the energy of his fellow Xerxean souls, essentially giving him a curse that he didn't want at a tragic price he'd live with for the rest of his days. Gurren Lagann is about overcoming obstacles and fighting for what you believe in, an ideal that's reflected by Team Dai Gurren, who were founded and led by Kamina and later led by Simon. In order to have such strength in the face of adversity, Simon and Kamina overcame their own obstacles, specifically their tragic backstories. Both characters were orphaned at young ages, but they took very different paths afterwards. Simon became isolated, doing what he did best without question because it kept him centered, becoming known as Simon the Digger. Kamina, on the other hand, became defiant after his father left for the surface world, knowing that there was a surface out there even though nobody believed him. Eventually, Kamina learned that his father died on the surface, adding to the tragedy of his origin. There are a lot of One Piece characters with tragic pasts, but Nico Robin has perhaps the most tragic of them all. For those who don't know, Robin is the only survivor of the destruction of her home, Ohara Island. That alone was enough for us to choose her for this video, but that's not even the worst part of it. The events that led up to the destruction of her home were even more traumatic, since she was left in the care of her aunt and uncle after her mother left to explore the world. Her aunt and uncle were incredibly abusive towards her, making it clear that she wasn't wanted or welcome in their home by forcing her to hide her presence, and not allowing her to participate in family events. Although he's originally presented as a villain, Scar of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood is eventually revealed to be a sympathetic character. In fact, his backstory is filled with tragedy and death. For those of you who haven't seen all of Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, we're gonna get into some spoilerific territory. Scar's backstory goes back to the Ishvalan Civil War, a conflict that led to the genocide of the Ishvalan race, including Scar's brother. However, before his brother died, he gave Scar his arm, an arm tattooed with alchemic symbols meant to destroy anything it touches. So Scar lost his people, his brother, his home, and was given a power that he did not ask for, using that power to destroy the state alchemists that were used as human weapons to destroy the Ishvalans. In Dragon Ball Super Broly, we learned that Broly was sent away to planet Vampa after King Vegeta learned of his massive power, his jealousy motivating his actions. After realizing that his son was being banished because of the king's corruption, Paragus swore to get his revenge on the royal family. This led him to train Broly and raise him to be a tool for his revenge, treating him less like a son and more like a weapon. Because of this, Broly became a servant to his father's whims, eager to please him despite his abusive behavior and scared of the punishment that would come if he didn't do as he was told. If that's not a tragic anime backstory, we don't know what is. Neither Kill la Kill Satsuki Kiryuin nor Ryuko Matui had easy upbringings. Satsuki was raised by her mother to be a tool in her plan to help the life fibers take over the planet, being subjected to cruelty and forced obedience from day one. The greatest tragedy in Satsuki's early life, however, was the death of her infant sister. After being deemed a life fiber integration failure by her mother, Ragyo Kiryuin, the infant was killed immediately, or at least it appeared that way. In reality, that baby was Ryuko, whom her father saved and took into hiding after learning the truth about his wife, building technology to stop her as he raised Ryuko. Food Wars is an anime about a prestigious cooking academy where all gather to hone their skills and challenge each other to, you guessed it, Food Wars. Among the students, there's Elite 10 member Erina Nakiri, a girl with such a developed palate that she's known as the God Tongue. However, as prestigious as this life might seem, Erina has a pretty dark backstory involving her father, Azami Nakiri. Azami raised Erina to be his puppet, forcing her to seclude herself from all those that he had deemed unworthy of the finest food and cooking in the world. So she couldn't receive letters from or write letters to her cousin Alice. Long story short, Erina was isolated from others by her abusive father, and while she might be abrasive, nothing compares to how she was treated. Her childhood making for one of the most tragic backstories in all of anime. With a name like Berserk, there's bound to be some characters with tragic origins, and the main protagonist, Guts, definitely fits the bill. Seriously, we have to warn you guys about how graphic Guts' backstory is. That is how tragic it is. Guts was born to a mother who had been hung, barely surviving as a baby before some mercenaries took him in. However, his surrogate mother was eventually murdered, and he was looked after by a swordsman who trained him to fight. Once again, however, when things started looking up, something horrible happened. Specifically, Guts was violated by someone, and later on, his surrogate father became abusive upon losing one of his legs, forcing Guts to kill him. Yeah, that's a lot to deal with as a kid. In fact, it might be the most intense and traumatic childhood in all of anime. It's a miracle that Guts has any good left in him after all of that. Soul Eater has a rather interesting premise. It's about students at a Grim Reaper Academy who either have the ability to turn into weapons, or are able to wield those who can become weapons. This results in the weapon and Meister having a strong relationship. They're friends and partners who understand each other. But this is not the case with Crona, who had their weapon forcibly made a part of them, which isn't even the worst part of their background. Nope, the true tragedy comes from their upbringing. As the child of the witch Medusa, Crona was tortured and abused into becoming the perfect killer. Forced into killing creatures until their personality became a destructive combination of introverted and completely insane. In fact, by their own admission, Crona is without morality due to Medusa's upbringing, their desire to appease their mother leading them to become a tool of the evil witch, a monster who killed in cold blood. Moving away from the action anime for a quick second, we have one of the most heartbreaking anime series of all time, Your Lie in April. The series follows Kousei Arima, a pianist with a tragic past. As a child, Kousei showed great promise as a piano player, and his mother, a famous player herself, taught him how to play. Eventually, when Kousei's mother grew sick, she focused more on teaching him, and as her health deteriorated and her own piano career faded away, she became bitter, pushing her son in an abusive way. This continued until her death, a trauma that left Kousei without the ability to hear his piano playing, thus cutting his own music career short. Kousei's mental block was eventually opened up by his relationship with Kaori Miyazono, one that would lead to its own tragedy because Your Lie in April was made for the sole reason of hitting us in the feels. In the world of Little Witch Academia, there was once an entertainer witch known as Shiny Chariot. While attending Luna Nova Magical Academy, Chariot studied powerful magic and became incredibly proficient at creating visual spectacles, which she mastered to achieve her dream of using magic to bring joy to others. And she did that for a while, but Chariot eventually quit after learning that her old classmate had modified her magic to draw its power from her audience, meaning she was draining the magical ability and potential of the children that came to see her, including series protagonist Akko. Chariot's dream of entertaining people became her greatest nightmare, leading her to go into hiding as a teacher at Luna Nova named Ursula. When we eventually learned that Chariot was responsible for Akko's lack of magical potential, it made for a tragic backstory for both characters, as their dreams had been crushed in the worst possible ways. The comedy of Fullmetal Panic is mainly derived from one thing: Sousuke Sagara. Specifically, the fact that Sousuke, who's a soldier posing as a regular Japanese high school student, thinks everyday occurrences are dangerous situations that could blow up into all-out war at any moment. The reason for this is actually quite tragic. You see, at a young age, Sousuke was in a plane crash that left him orphaned and in the care of the Soviet government, who placed him into a child soldier program and sent him to a war-torn country to kill a resistance leader. However, he instead joined the resistance, continuing to be a child soldier until he was a teenager, when he was hired to be a part of Mithril. Long story short, Sousuke was a child soldier who experienced more than his fair share of war, seeing tragedies that no child should ever have to experience. So, there you have it, the most interesting, devastating, and feels-destroying anime backstories of all time. What did you think? Did we leave any good ones out? Which of these backstories left you the most emotionally devastated? Let us know down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to CBR for more anime videos. Thanks for watching!